The assembly hall of Threshold 7 Academy buzzed with nervous energy as cadets from across known space gathered for their first day of physical conditioning training. Marcus Chen stood among the crowd, acutely aware of the curious glances directed his way from beings of every imaginable shape and size to his left. A towering crawler with deep purple skin and forearms shifted from foot to foot, his bulk making the floor vibrate slightly on his right. A delicate Varashi female with translucent blue skin and large dark eyes studied a datapad, her fingers moving across the screen with practiced efficiency. Marcus had been the first human accepted into the Galactic Cooperative's premier military academy, arriving 3 months after Earth officially joined the Alliance. The other species knew little about humanity beyond basic facts. They came from a planet called Earth. They had joined the cooperative recently, and their world was classified as high gravity. Most of the assembled cadets seemed indifferent to Marcus's presence, though a few watched him with what might have been skepticism. The massive doors at the far end of the hall opened with a hydraulic hiss. An instructor Drovan entered. The crawler stood nearly 3 meters tall, his ceremonial training armor gleaming under the harsh lights. His reputation preceded him. Drovan had trained elite soldiers for 40 standard years and took no nonsense from anyone. Cadets, attention! Drovan's voice boomed across the hall without need for amplification. The assembled recruits snapped to positions of respect, each species adopting their cultural equivalent of standing at attention. Marcus stood straight, hands at his sides, eyes forward. "You come from many worlds," Drovan began, pacing before them with deliberate steps. "You speak different languages, follow different customs, worship different gods, or no gods at all." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembly. "But here, you are all the same. You are all weak." A murmur ran through the crowd, quickly silenced by Drovan's raised hand. Physical conditioning is the foundation upon which all military discipline is built. He continued, "Without strength, you cannot carry your wounded companion. Without endurance, you cannot complete your mission. Without coordination, you endanger your entire unit." He gestured toward the doors behind him. "Today, we begin the process of transforming you from civilians into soldiers. Follow me." The cadets filed into the training facility, a cavernous space filled with equipment Marcus had never seen before. Adaptive weight systems lined the walls, their sleek surfaces embedded with holographic displays. Several large open areas were marked for group exercises. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and the faint metallic tang of well-used. Lieutenant Drovan positioned himself at the center of the room. "These systems will adjust to your species' physiology," he explained, gesturing to the nearest machine. "Each of you will begin with weights calibrated to your homeworld's gravity and your species' military baseline." He demonstrated the equipment, showing how it responded to his touch and adjusted resistance based on his strength. The technology was impressive, far beyond anything Earth currently possessed. As Drovan walked down the line of cadets, assigning each to a station, Marcus watched the displays light up with different measurements. The Varashi female, who he learned was named Salantha, received a setting labeled 06 SGU. A stocky thin male named Korvik got 0 to 7. Sue Drovan himself came from a world rated at 0 to 75 SGU when the instructor reached Marcus. He paused. The machine's scanner swept over the human, and the display flickered to life. Homeworld gravity 10 scud. Number hung in the air like an accusation. Conversations around the room died as other cadets noticed the reading. Marcus felt dozens of eyes turn toward him, one full standard gravity unit higher than any species currently represented in the cooperative. Military Drovan's expression remained neutral, but Marcus detected a flicker of surprise in the instructor's eyes. "Earth is a high-gravity world," Drovan stated. His voice carrying across the now silent gymnasium, he input commands into Marcus's station, and the machine hummed to life. You will begin at human baseline. Military standards. The resistance. Levels that appeared on Marcus's display were significantly higher than most other cadets. Drovan stepped back and addressed the entire assembly once more. You will each complete 3 sets of resistance exercises at your assigned levels. The goal is not to impress me or your fellow cadets. The goal is to understand your current capabilities, so we can improve them. He crossed his upper set of arms over his chest. Lift what you can. The words were simple, direct. Unmistakable. Marcus looked at his station, then at the instructor, then back at the weights. The question formed in his mind before he could stop it. Sir, you mean their limit or mine? The gymnasium fell completely silent. Even the hum of the machines seemed to diminish in the wake of Marcus's question. Drovan turned slowly, his 4 eyes focusing on the human with an intensity that would have made most cadets step back. Marcus held his ground, his question genuine rather than challenging. Been a competitive powerlifter back on Earth before joining the military, and the weights displayed on his machine were similar to what he used for warm-up sets. The instructor's mandibles clicked together. Qualther expression Marcus hadn't learned to interpret yet. You believe the machine has underestimated you? Drovan asked, his tone carefully neutral. I don't know, sir. Marcus replied honestly. I've never used equipment like this before. I just want to make sure I understand the assignment. Korvik, the then cadet, made a sound somewhere between a snort and a growl. Typical Deathworlder arrogance, he muttered. Though not quietly enough, Silantha shot then a disapproving look but said nothing. Drovan raised a hand for silence. His expression had shifted from neutral to something Marcus couldn't quite read. Perhaps curiosity, perhaps annoyance. Very well. Human, the instructor said, show us what you can do. Demonstrate for your fellow cadets what a warrior from a one-gravity world is capable of. Marcus felt the weight of expectation settle on his shoulders as every cadet in the facility turned to watch. This wasn't how he'd wanted to start his academy career. Hoped to blend in, learn quietly, prove himself through consistent effort rather than spectacle. But the question had been asked, and now he had to answer. I'd approached his assigned station and checked the resistance settings one more time. The machine was calibrated for what it considered human military baseline, probably based on limited data from the few hundred humans now scattered across cooperative space. Marcus adjusted his stance, feet shoulder width apart, and gripped the handles. The weight felt solid in his hands, substantial but manageable. He began the first repetition, his movements controlled and deliberate. The resistance was significant, but nothing compared to what he'd lifted in competition. He completed the first set of 10 repetitions without strain, his breathing steady around him. He heard whispers start up among the watching cadets. Drovan's expression remained unreadable. Continue, the instructor commanded. Marcus completed the second set, feeling the burn in his muscles but nowhere near his limit. The third set required more effort, but he maintained proper form throughout. When he finished, he stepped back from the machine and waited for further instruction. The gymnasium had grown even quieter. Drovan approached Marcus's station and studied the Riadouch's mandibles clicked again. Faster this time. Increase resistance by 30%. The instructor ordered. The machine adjusted with a soft hum. Marcus repeated the exercise, this time feeling genuine resistance. Sweat began to bead on his forehead by the third set, but he completed all repetitions. Drovan increased the weight again and again. Each time, Marcus pushed through, his face flushing with effort but his determination unwavering. By the fifth increase, the machine was displaying resistance levels that made several cadets gasp. Antha had pulled out her datapad and was running calculations. Her eyes widening as she processed the numbers. Finally, Marcus completed a set that left him breathing hard. His muscles trembling slightly, Droven held up a hand. Enough. The instructor turned to address the assembled cadets. Though his eyes remained on Marcus, it appears we have much to learn about humans, he said. Tomorrow, we will continue standard training. But first, Cadet Chan will join me in the heavy load testing facility. I believe we need to recalibrate our understanding of what human baseline actually means. Marcus caught his breath and nodded around him. The whispers had grown into full conversations. Some cadets looked impressed, others skeptical. A few appeared concerned as the group dispersed to their assigned stations to complete their own exercises. Marcus noticed Stilanta making her way toward him. "Those resistance levels you just handled," she said quietly. Her voice melodic and precise. "They're equivalent to what would crush most species in this room." She tilted her head, studying him with scientific curiosity. How is that possible from a one-gravity world? Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. "I honestly don't know," he admitted. "On Earth, I'm strong, but not unusually so. There are plenty of humans who could lift more than me." Stilant's large eyes blinked slowly. "Fascinating," she whispered across the room. Droven stood speaking quietly with another instructor, who had appeared in the doorway. Both were looking at Marcus with expressions the human couldn't quite decipher whatever happened in that testing facility tomorrow. Marcus realized was going to change how the cooperative viewed humanity. He just hoped. The heavy load testing facility occupied the lowest level of Threshold 7 Academy, built with reinforced walls designed to contain equipment failures and accidents involving the strongest species in the cooperative. Marcus followed Instructor, driven through corridors that grew progressively more industrial. The polished floors of the upper academy giving way to bare metal grating. They descended 3 levels via a cargo lift large enough to transport battle mechs. The equipment here was designed for stress testing combat exoskeletons. Droven explained as they walked. It can generate resistance equivalent to worlds up to 2 standard gravity units. We also use it occasionally for species who require extreme conditioning. Marcus nodded, still uncertain where this was leading. The instructor had been cordial during their journey, asking questions about Earth's military training, programs in human physiology, but there was an intensity to Droven's curiosity that suggested yesterday's demonstration had been more significant than Marcus realized. They entered the testing facility through a blast door that hissed open at Droven's touch. Room beyond was enormous, easily 5 times the size of the standard gymnasium. Massive machines lined the walls, their frames constructed from dark alloys that gleamed under harsh industrial lighting. A observation gallery ran along one wall, already occupied by several figures. "Word spreads quickly in the academy," Droven said. Following Marcus's gaze, several instructors expressed interest in observing today's assessment. Marcus felt his stomach tighten slightly, but pushed it. Nervousness down. Had competed in front of crowds before. This was just another performance. It led him to a machine in the center of the room. It looked similar to the equipment from yesterday, but built on a much larger scale. This device measures absolute lifting capacity across multiple movement patterns, the instructor explained. "We'll test your strength in 6 different exercises. Each test will increase resistance until you reach failure. The machine will stop automatically if it detects a risk of injury." Marcus examined the equipment, noting safety features and emergency releases. "Understood, sir. One more thing," Droven added, his voice dropping slightly. "Yesterday, you asked whether you should lift to the class limit or your own limit. Today, I want to see your actual limit." Do not hold back. The instructor stepped back to a control console while Marcus approached the machine. The first test was a basic lifting movement, similar to what humans would call a deadlift. Marcus gripped the handles and waited for the machine to activate. The resistance started low, almost insultingly light. He completed the first repetition easily. The machine increased the weight. Marcus lifted again. His form solid. The progression continued, the resistance climbing steadily through the observation window. Marcus could see more figures gathering. He recognized Celante's distinctive silhouette, along with several other cadets from his training group. Even Korvik was there. His arms crossed as he watched the weight continue to climb. Marcus felt his muscles engage fully now, his body settling into the familiar rhythm of the maximum lifters. Breathing became measured, and controlled sweat began to coat his skin. The machine's display showed numbers that meant nothing to Marcus. Cooperative measurements he hadn't fully learned yet, but he could see. Droven's expression shift from curiosity to something approaching shock at the observation window. An instructor Marcus didn't recognize was speaking rapidly into a communicator. The resistance increased again. Marcus's muscles strained, his face flushing with effort, but he completed the lift, locked out at the top, and carefully returned to the starting position. Continue. Droven's voice came through speakers in the ceiling. The machine added more weight. Marcus took a deep breath, set his grip, and pulled the bar. Moved slower this time, but it moved his entire body, engaged in the effort. From his legs driving against the floor to his back and arms hauling the weight upward, he completed the repetition and stood gasping. Final increase, Droven announced. The machine hummed, adding what Marcus suspected was a significant amount of resistance. He approached the bar again, knowing this would likely be his limit. The metal felt cold against his palms. As he set his grip, he took 3 quick breaths, then one deep one, and initiated the pull. The weight resisted, enormous and unyielding for a moment. Marcus thought it wouldn't move then. Millimeter by millimeter, it began to rise. His legs shook with the effort. His back screamed in protest, but the weight continued. Its upward journey time seemed to slow as Marcus fought against the resistance. He could hear his heartbeat pounding in his ears. Finally, impossibly, he reached lockout. He held the position for a 3 count, then carefully lowered the weight. When it settled with a heavy thunk, Marcus stepped back and bent over, hands on his knees, breathing hard. The observation gallery had gone completely silent. Droven stood at the console, staring at the Riadouch's mandibles hung slightly open. An expression Marcus had learned indicated profound surprise. These numbers, the instructor said slowly, indicate you just lifted the equivalent of what would be expected from a species native to a 1.6 gravity world. Marcus straightened up, still catching his breath. Is that good or bad, sir? It should be impossible, Droven replied. A 1 gravity world cannot produce this level of muscle density. The evolutionary pressure isn't sufficient. Before Marcus could respond, a door at the far end of the facility opened. An elderly Palithian entered, moving with the careful dignity of advanced age. His skin had the silver-gray tone that marked his species' elders, and his eyes held the sharp intelligence of someone who'd spent decades in military service. Commandant Kerwin. Droven straightened to attention. Marcus quickly did the same. At ease, Kerwin said, waving a slender hand. I was observing from my office when Instructor Velmer contacted me about unusual readings from the testing facility. He approached Marcus, studying the human with open curiosity. You are Earth's first Academy cadet. Yes, sir, Marcus confirmed. Tell me about your training background. I was a competitive powerlifter before joining Earth's military. Sir, Marcus explained, I've been training seriously for about 8 years. Before that, I played various sports growing up. Kerwin nodded slowly. And would you consider yourself exceptional among humans? Marcus hesitated, then decided on honesty. I'm strong, sir, even by human standards. But there are plenty of humans stronger than me. I wasn't even in the top 10 in my weight class for international competition. The commandant's eyes widened. Slightly, he turned to Drovan. We need a full physiological assessment. Contact the Xenobiology Institute and request their best researcher. I want to understand what makes this possible over the next 2 hours. Marcus completed the remaining 5 tests. Each one produced similar results. Strength levels that exceeded what should be possible for a species from a one-gravity world by the time they finished. The observation gallery was packed with instructors and senior cadets. Word had spread through the academy like wildfire when Marcus finally emerged from the testing facility. He found a small crowd waiting in the car. Silanta pushed through to reach him. Do you understand what you just did? She asked, her voice tight with excitement. You lifted weights that would kill most cooperative species. The Tharn Dominion, they're from a 1.4 gravity world, and they're considered too aggressive for military service because their strength makes them dangerous in close combat. You just matched their recorded capabilities. Korvik appeared beside her, his earlier skepticism replaced with something Marcus might have called respect. I owe you an apology. Human, the Then said gruffly. I thought you were boasting yesterday. I didn't realize you were actually uncertain about the answer. Marcus managed a tired smile. I really was just asking a question. I've never trained with anyone from another species before. I had no idea what was normal. Clearly, you're not normal, Silanta said, though her tone was warm. The question is whether this is unique to you or common among humans. If even a fraction of your species can do what you just demonstrated, it changes everything we know about Deathworld evolution. That evening, Marcus sat in his quarters, reviewing the day's events. His muscles ached pleasantly. The familiar burn of a hard workout. His communicator chimed with messages from Earth News of his testing had already reached home. The BPA's cooperative had sent preliminary reports to Earth's liaison office, and people wanted to know if the numbers were real. Marcus was composing a response to his former coach when his door chimed. He opened it to find Commandant Kerwin standing in the hallway. May I come in, cadet? Of course, sir. Marcus stepped as the core, entered and waited until Marcus closed the door. I've been in military service for 63 standard years, the commandant began. I've trained soldiers from 47 different species. I thought I understood the limits of biological potential. He paused, his ancient eyes studying Marcus. Today, you showed me I was wrong. Tomorrow, a researcher from the Xenobiology Institute will arrive to study you. I'm asking for your full cooperation with her research. Absolutely. Sir, Marcus said without hesitation. We need to understand what humans are truly capable of. Kerwin continued. Not because I want to exploit your people, but because I want to keep them alive. If we don't understand your capabilities, we can't properly train you, equip you, or deploy you. He moved toward the door, then paused. Dr. Velshara arrived at Threshold 7 3 days after Marcus's demonstration in the heavy load testing facility. She was a Centauri, a species known throughout the cooperative for their analytical minds and dedication to pure research. Her skin shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that shifted with her mood, currently displaying cool blues and greens that Marcus learned indicated calm professional interest. Cadet Chen, she greeted him in the Academy's medical wing. Thank you for agreeing to participate in this study. I promise to make the process as painless as possible. Marcus quickly discovered that Dr. Velshara's definition of painless differed significantly from his own over the next week. He endured every test the Xenobiology Institute could devise. They scanned his muscles, analyzed his bone density, measured his cardiovascular efficiency, studied his nervous system's response time, and even examined his genetic code throughout it all. Dr. Valshara maintained a running commentary on her findings. Fascinating, she murmured during a muscle fiber analysis. Your slow twitch and fast twitch ratios are completely different from any species I've studied. You have capacity for both explosive power and extended endurance. She pulled up comparative data on her holographic display. Most cooperative species evolved on worlds with relatively stable climates and limited predator pressure. Their bodies are efficient but not particularly adaptable. Humans, however, seem built for variability. Marcus watched the data scroll past, understanding perhaps half of what he saw. What does that mean practically? It means your species is overbuilt, Dr. Valshara explained. Your muscles are denser than necessary for your gravity. Your bones are stronger than they need to be. Your cardiovascular system can support sustained activity that would exhaust most species. She highlighted a section of the display. More importantly, you appear to be one of the only sapient species capable of significant hypertrophic adaptation. In simpler terms, you can build substantially more muscle through training. Most species are born at 80 to 90% of their maximum possible physical capacity. Humans start much lower and can potentially triple their baseline strength. Marcus considered this. So I'm strong because I train hard? Partially, Dr. Valshara agreed. But your species' capacity for training adaptation is itself unusual. The human you were 8 years ago and the human you are now are almost different organisms in terms of physical capability. That level of change is simply not possible for most cooperative species. As the study progressed, Marcus's fame throughout the academy grew. Cadets from every species wanted to meet him, train with him, or simply observe him. Some, like Silanta, approached from genuine curiosity. Others, like Korvik, saw him as a challenge to overcome. A few maintained their distance, viewing him with suspicion. Marcus handled the attention as best he could, remaining friendly but not boastful. His instructors began adapting their training specifically for him. Drovan designed resistance programs to push Marcus far beyond standard human baselines. Combat instructors requested his participation in demonstrations, curious to see how human strength translated to practical fighting. It was during one such demonstration that Marcus made an offhand comment that would change everything. The combat instructor, a sleek Valthari named Ixnal, had asked Marcus to participate in a zero-gravity close-quarters drill. The academy maintained several training rooms with adjustable gravity for preparing cadets to fight in space stations or aboard ships. Marcus found the zero-gravity environment disorienting at first, but his body adapted quickly. Ixnal paired him against a senior cadet, a heavily built Kreth who outweighed Marcus by at least 40 kilograms in the weightless environment. Mass mattered differently. The Kreth cadet launched himself at Marcus with confidence, expecting to use his bulk to control the engagement. Marcus did something that made every observer in the room pause. He didn't try to match the Kreth's momentum or redirect it. Instead, he grabbed the larger cadet and used a technique that translated poorly to cooperative languages, but which humans call a hip throw in zero gravity, without a floor to throw someone against. The technique became something else entirely, a way to control rotation and position. Marcus ended up behind the Kreth cadet, one arm around his opponent's neck in a control hold. The match ended seconds later. How did you do that? Ixnal demanded, replaying the footage. That wasn't in any cooperative combat manual. Marcus released the Kreth cadet, who floated away rubbing his neck. It's called grappling. Sir, human close-quarters combat focuses a lot on controlling your opponent's body rather than just striking. We have entire martial arts dedicated to it. Show me, Ixnal commanded, for the next hour. Marcus demonstrated basic grappling techniques adapted for zero gravity. The watching instructors and cadets were transfixed everything. Marcus showed them contradicted established cooperative doctrine, which emphasized maintaining distance in close combat and relying on weapons or strikes, grappling. The idea of deliberately entering close range and using your own body to control an opponent was considered primitive and inefficient. Yet watching Marcus move through zero gravity with confidence, turning an environment most species found disorienting into an advantage, made several instructors reconsider their assumptions. That evening, Commandant Kerwin summoned Marcus to his office. Velshar was already there. Along with Drovan and Ixnal Cadet Chun, Kerwin began. Your demonstration today raised some interesting questions. Instructor Ixnal believes human close-quarters combat doctrine may address a persistent problem in cooperative military operations. Ixnal activated a holographic display showing footage of battle damage. The Void Reavers, the combat instructor explained. They're a machine intelligence operating at the galaxy's edge. Most encounters involve long-range combat where we have clear superiority, but occasionally Reavers infest abandoned stations or derelict ships. Clearing these structures requires close-quarters combat in confined spaces, often with zero or low gravity. More footage appeared cooperative soldiers struggling to navigate tight corridors, becoming exhausted quickly, failing to maintain cohesion in three-dimensional environments. Our soldiers are trained primarily for open-field combat. Ixnal continued. Close-quarters fighting in variable gravity exhausts them. They become disoriented, waste energy, and make tactical mistakes. We typically just destroy infested structures rather than risk casualties. But sometimes that's not an option. Kerwin added critical data, valuable materials, or strategic positions force us to conduct boarding operations. Those missions have the highest casualty rates in the cooperative military. Marcus studied the footage, recognizing the problems immediately. The soldiers were fighting gravity. Instead of using it, they maintained rigid formations that made no sense in three dimensions. They seemed uncomfortable with the physical contact required for close combat. Human military training includes extensive zero-gravity combat preparation. Marcus said carefully. We train for boarding actions, station assaults, ship-to-ship fighting. It's a core part of our tactical doctrine. Why? Drovan asked. No offense intended. But humanity has barely begun space exploration. You've had functional spacecraft for less than 2 centuries. Why would you emphasize combat in an environment you rarely encounter? Marcus considered how to explain without insulting anyone. Because we're paranoid. Sir, humans spend most of our history fighting each other. When we finally reached space, we assumed we'd encounter hostiles. We prepared for every possible combat scenario we could imagine. Dr. Velshara's bioluminescence shifted to warm, orange amusement. Marcus had learned a very human approach. She observed, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Kerwin stood and moved to the window, overlooking the academy grounds. Cadet Chun, how would you feel about Earth providing combat training to cooperative forces? The question hung in the air. Marcus felt its weight. This was more than a request for him to share techniques. This was asking Earth to take a more active role in cooperative military operations. I'd need to discuss it with Earth's liaison office, sir. Marcus said carefully. That decision is above my authority. Of course. Kerwin agreed, but I wanted your perspective first. Do you believe human close-quarters combat techniques would benefit cooperative soldiers? Marcus thought about the footage he'd seen, about the struggling soldiers and preventable casualties. Yes. Sir, I think we could help. 2 weeks later, the response came from Earth, a human cooperative. Liaison Office had consulted with Earth's military leadership and agreed to send a training team to Threshold VE. Would conduct a pilot program teaching human close quarters combat doctrine to a small group of cooperative cadets if successful. The program might expand throughout the cooperative military. Marcus learned about the decision from Silanta, who burst into his quarters waving her datapad. "Did you see the announcement?" she asked excitedly. "Earth is sending instructors, and you'll never guess who they're assigning to the pilot program." "Who?" Marcus asked, though he had a sinking feeling he already knew. "Us." Silanta grinned. "You, me, Korvik, and 7 others from our training group. We're going to learn human comb to concern the Yellows." Master Sergeant Okonkwo wasted no time establishing her training program. The morning after her arrival, she assembled the pilot group in one of the Academy's zero-gravity training rooms. Marcus stood among the 10 selected cadets, feeling oddly nervous despite having trained in similar environments before. Silanta was to his left, her bioluminescence flickering with anticipation. Korvik stood to his right, his forearms crossed in what Marcus had learned was the thin equivalent of standing at attention. Sarah walked slowly in front of them, her mag boots keeping her anchored to the floor while the rest of the room's gravity was disabled. "Most of you come from worlds where gravity is constant and predictable," she began. "Your species evolved on surfaces, moving in essentially 2 dimensions with occasional vertical elements." She released her mag boots and pushed off gently. "Floating upward in space combat, that assumption will get you killed. With economical movements." Sarah oriented herself in 3 different directions, demonstrating complete comfort in the weightless environment. Humans evolved as climbers and swimmers as well as ground dwellers. We're comfortable thinking in 3 dimensions. More importantly, we evolved as persistence hunters and grapplers. She gestured to Marcus. "Cadet Chun, join me please." Marcus pushed off carefully, joining Sarah in the center of the room. His inner ear protested the lack of gravity, but his training helped him compensate. "Attack me," Sarah commanded. Marcus hesitated. Sarah was older, smaller, and technically his superior officer. "That's an order." "Cadet." Marcus launched himself forward, using a push-off technique Ixnel had taught him. Sarah didn't try to evade. Instead, she did something that seemed impossible. She grabbed Marcus's extended arm, used his own momentum against him, and somehow ended up behind him with her arm around his throat. The entire sequence took perhaps 2 seconds in zero gravity. "Momentum is both weapon and vulnerability," Sarah explained. Releasing Marcus, your opponent's mass and velocity become tools you can use, but only if you understand how to control a body in 3-dimensional space. She addressed the watching cadets. Human close-quarters combat evolved from wrestling, boxing, and various martial arts developed over thousands of years. We're going to teach you the fundamentals adapted for zero gravity in confined spaces. Fair warning, this will be uncomfortable. Most species avoid physical contact in combat. We embrace it. The first week of training was brutal. Sarah and her team pushed the cadets through drills that seemed designed to disorient and exhaust them. They practiced moving in zero gravity until their inner ears stopped protesting. They learned to read 3-dimensional space. Instinctively most challenging, they learned to grapple, to grab, hold, and control opponents in an environment where traditional wrestling made no sense. Silanta struggled initially, her Virashi physiology not built for close physical contact. "My people are not comfortable with touching others," she explained during a break, her bioluminescence showing frustrated reds. "It feels invasive. That's why you need to learn it." Sarah replied without sympathy. "Your discomfort is a vulnerability enemies can exploit. Overcome it or fail." Korvik had different problems. His forearms gave him advantages in grappling, but his thin instincts made him too aggressive. You're trying to overpower your opponent, Sarah observed after watching him nearly injure a training partner. In zero gravity, excessive force just pushes both of you apart. You need control, not power. Marcus found himself in an unusual position helping teach techniques he'd known since childhood. Sarah frequently called on him to demonstrate, using their size difference to show how leverage and technique could overcome raw strength. Chun, show them the arm drag again, Sarah commanded during a session on controlling larger opponents. Marcus worked through the technique slowly, explaining each step in standard gravity. An arm drag used your opponent's forward pressure against them. In zero gravity, it became a way to redirect momentum and establish positional control. The other cadets watched intently, some taking notes on their datapads after 2 weeks of intensive drilling. Sarah announced they would practice against the human instructors. You've learned the techniques, she said. Now we see if you can apply them under pressure. The matches were eye-opening. Marcus faced off against Instructor Davis, a compact man with 20 years of special operations experience. Davis moved through zero gravity like he was born there, his movements economical and precise. Marcus attempted a technique they practiced at morning, closing distance and establishing a clinch. Davis countered effortlessly, used Marcus's momentum to spin him around, and ended up in a dominant position. The match ended in seconds. Better, Davis said afterward, but you're still thinking in terms of moves rather than positions. Zero-G fighting is about controlling space and your opponent's orientation. Individual techniques matter less than understanding the geometry. Salanta surprised everyone by lasting nearly 30 seconds against Instructor Park. Her smaller size and lower mass made her harder to control, and she'd overcome her aversion to physical contact through sheer determination when Park finally secured a submission hold. Salanta's bioluminescence flashed bright green triumph. Marcus had learned. You're learning, Park acknowledged. Keep that aggression but stay controlled. Korvik did well against Instructor Rodriguez, using his forearms creatively to establish grips that will be impossible for two-armed species. He still lost, but Rodriguez had to work for it. After the training session, Commandant Kerwin visited to observe their progress, floated in the observation area while the cadets ran through their drills, his ancient eyes missing nothing. Impressive, he told Sarah afterward. I've never seen cooperative soldiers move like that in zero gravity. They're still learning, Sarah replied, but they have potential. The key is getting them comfortable with physical contact and three-dimensional thinking. Once those fundamentals are solid, the specific techniques come easier. Corwin nodded thoughtfully. How long before they're combat ready? For real operations? Sarah considered 6 months minimum for basic proficiency, a year for competence. These aren't techniques you can rush. The Commandant's expression turned serious. We may not have a year. Intelligence reports indicate increased reaver activity in the frontier sectors. Several stations have gone dark in the past month. Sarah met his gaze steadily. Then we train harder and hope 6 months is enough. That hope was tested sooner than anyone expected. 3 weeks into the training program, alarms blared through threshold via Marcus was in the middle of a grappling session with Korvik when the emergency lights activated. Instructor Davis's voice cut through there. Communicators, all personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Marcus and Korvik exchanged glances, then kicked off toward the exit. The corridors were controlled chaos as Academy staff moved to battle stations. Marcus made his way to the cadet assembly point, where Drovin was already organizing responses. What's happening? Salantha asked, arriving seconds after Marcus. Reaver incursion. Drovin replied grimly. A mining station in the Kepler 7 system has been infested. The station contains critical research data on new propulsion systems. Cooperative command wants it cleared, not destroyed. He paused, his mandibles clicking. With what Marcus recognized as concern, there. Requesting our human trained squad as backup for the primary clearance team. Marcus felt his stomach drop. 3 weeks of training. Against actual combat it seemed insane. Sir, he began. But Drovan cut him off. Commandant Kerwin is discussing it with Master Sergeant Okonkwo now. Stand by for orders. 20 minutes later, they received confirmation the human-trained squad would deploy as reserve support if the primary team completed the clearance successfully. The squad would assist with securing the station if the primary team ran into trouble. The squad would be sent in. Sarah gathered them in a briefing room. Her expression was grim but determined. I know you're not ready, she said bluntly. I know 3 weeks isn't enough training, but command believes having you available is better than having no close quarters specialists at all. She pulled up tactical layouts of the mining station. The primary team consists of standard cooperative Marines, good soldiers, well trained for conventional combat. If they succeed, we celebrate. If they don't, we go in and finish the job. Marcus studied the station layout, tight corridors, multiple levels, complex 3-dimensional structure, exactly the kind of environment where human training would matter most. Questions? Sarah asked. Korvik raised one of his 4 hands. What if we fail? Sarah's expression didn't change. Then a lot of people die, including us. Any other questions? The room remained silent. Good. Sarah continued. Final equipment check in 30 minutes. We deploy in 90. Get your head straight and remember your training. As the briefing broke up, Marcus found himself standing with Silantha and Korvik. Are you afraid? Silantha asked quietly. Her bioluminescence showed complicated patterns. Marcus couldn't quite read. Terrified. Marcus admitted, but we can do this. We've trained for exactly this scenario. Korvik's arms flexed unconsciously. The mining station's corridors were a maze of metal and shadow. Emergency lighting cast everything in red, creating pools of darkness between each lamp. Marcus moved behind Sarah, his weapon held in a ready position. They drilled endlessly. The gravity varied as they progressed deeper, some sections at full standard, others at 0. A few with fluctuating fields that made movement treacherous. Primary team, respond. Sarah called over the static answered. Motion the squad forward. They found the first bodies in corridor 7-3. Cooperative Marines torn apart by Reaver weapons. The machines had been efficient and brutal. Marcus forced himself to look away and focus on the mission. Sarah knelt beside the bodies briefly, checking for survivors, finding none. She stood and pointed down a side passage. Station layout shows the research data in the central hub. She said quietly, primary team was pushing that direction when they got hit. We continue the mission. The squad moved in paired formation, covering each other as they advanced. Marcus was paired with Silantha, her smaller frame staying close to his left side. Korvik moved ahead with Instructor Davis, his 4 arms carrying both a rifle and a backup weapon. They encountered the first active Reavers in a junction where 3 corridors met. The machines were spider-like constructs, each about the size of a large dog, with multiple limbs ending in weapons or cutting tools. Their optical sensors glowed blue in the dimness. Sarah fired first. Her shots precise and controlled. The lead Reaver exploded in a shower of sparks. The others scattered, moving with unnatural speed. 3-dimensional thinking. Sarah shouted, check your verticals. Marcus looked up just in time to see a Reaver crawling across the ceiling. He fired, catching it in the central processor, dropped with a metallic crash beside him. Silantha had already engaged 2 more, her smaller weapon chirping as it fired. For someone who'd been uncomfortable with violence 3 weeks ago, she'd adapted remarkably. The junction cleared. They pushed forward. The station's layout forced them into a large cargo bay where the gravity failed completely, floating. Debris made navigation dangerous. Shipping containers, tools, and stranger things drifted in the zero-G environment. Spread out. Sarah ordered, maintain visual contact but give yourselves room to maneuver. They were halfway across the bay when the Reavers attacked. At least 20 machines emerged from hiding spots. Among the cargo containers, they moved in coordinated patterns, clearly communicating through some machine network. Defensive formation. Davis called. The squad pulled together, creating overlapping fields of fire but in zero gravity. Traditional defensive tactics had limitations. The Reavers could attack from any angle. Marcus found himself rotating constantly, trying to track threats above, below, and from all sides. A Reaver came at him from an unexpected vector, not straight on but spiraling in a trajectory designed to confuse Marcus's. Training took over. Instead of trying to track the machine with his weapon, he grabbed a piece of floating debris and threw it. The debris intercepted the Reaver's path, disrupting its approach. In that moment of disruption, Marcus fired. The Reaver died in a burst of sparks. Good instinct. Sarah called, use the environment. The squad adapted quickly. Korvik grabbed a small cargo container and used it as a mobile shield, pushing it ahead of him while firing around its edges. Antha anchored herself to a support beam and created a stable firing position. Instructor Park did something crazy. She kicked off toward a cluster of Reavers, firing as she flew, then used a grappling technique to grab one of the machines and used its body to redirect her momentum. It was insane and brilliant. The Reavers didn't know how to respond to tactics they'd never encountered there. Programming anticipated range combat, defensive positions, predictable movement. The human-trained squad gave them none of those things. The squad moved through the cargo bay like they were swimming, using three-dimensional space in ways the machines couldn't predict. Marcus found himself fighting side by side with Korvik. Then's forearms made him deadly in zero gravity. He could fire, reload, grab, and push off simultaneously. Together they cleared a path through the Reaver's central hub ahead. Davis called, final push. They kicked off together, the entire squad moving in a coordinated assault. The central hub was a spherical room at the station's core, its walls lined with computer terminals and data storage. A massive Reaver construct occupied the center, something much larger than the spider machines they'd been fighting. This one looked like it had been assembled from station parts. An improvised command unit. That's new. Sarah muttered. Suggestions? I have one. Marcus said an idea had formed. Insane but possible. If we can disable its mobility, we can take it apart piece by piece. And how do we disable a machine that big? Davis asked. Marcus pulled a thermal charge from his equipment belt. Standard issue for cutting through bulkheads. We get close and plant explosives on its joints. Sarah looked at him like he'd lost his mind. That requires getting within arm's reach of that thing. Yes. Marcus agreed. But we're trained for close combat, and it's not. Sarah considered for perhaps 3 seconds. Do it. Chun. Korvik, you're on demolition. Everyone else, provide covering fire. Marcus and Korvik exchanged glances. The Then's expression might have been a smile. Try to keep up. Human, Korvik said. They kicked off together. The command Reaver detected them immediately, its multiple weapon ports tracking their approach. The rest of the squad opened fire, targeting sensors and weapons to give Marcus and Korvik a window. Marcus twisted in flight, avoiding a burst of energy fire that singed his suit. Korvik was already at the machine, his forearms working independently, two fighting off smaller Reavers, two planting charges. Marcus reached the command unit and grabbed a protruding antenna for leverage up close. The machine was massive, easily 5 meters across. He planted his first charge on what looked like a primary articulation point. A Small Reaver dropped from above. Trying to dislodge him, Marcus caught it with his free hand. Using a zero-G grappling technique Sarah had taught them, he redirected the machine's momentum, sending it spinning away, then returned to planting charges. Charges set. Korvac called, "Go, go, go." Sarah ordered. Marcus kicked off hard. Pushing away from the command Reaver, Korvac was already moving, his forearms giving him exceptional control. The charges detonated in sequence. The command Reaver shuddered. Its articulation points destroyed. It couldn't maneuver anymore, couldn't orient its weapons effectively. The squad concentrated fire on its central processor. It took 30 seconds of sustained fire, but the machine finally died. Its lights faded, and the smaller Reavers throughout the hub suddenly became erratic, their coordinated behavior breaking down. Command link severed. Davis reported, "Remaining Reavers are operating on basic programming only." The squad made quick work of the remaining machines. When the last Reaver fell, silence descended on the central hub. Sarah floated to the main terminal and accessed the research data. "It's intact," she reported. "Mission accomplished." Marcus felt the tension drain from his body, leaving him exhausted. Around him, the squad was reacting similarly. Relief, fatigue, and growing awareness of what they'd just accomplished. "Primary team?" Salantha asked quietly. Sarah checked her comm. "No additional survivors. We were their backup plan. Without us, this station and all its data would have been lost." The journey back to Threshold Bay was subdued. Theed succeeded, but the cost weighed on everyone. The primary teams' casualties were a reminder that training couldn't eliminate all danger. Commandant Cohen met them at the docking bay. His expression was grave but proud. "Well done," he said simply. "You accomplished what many thought impossible. The cooperative owes you a debt." News of the mission spread rapidly through this cooperative. A mixed squad of barely trained cadets had succeeded where veteran Marines had fallen. More importantly, they demonstrated that human close-quarters combat doctrine worked in practical applications. Within a week, Marcus received notification that he'd been promoted ahead of schedule. More significantly, Earth received a formal request from the Cooperative High Command. They wanted to establish a combat training division, with humans as primary instructors for all close quarters and boarding operations. Sarah was offered command of the new division. She accepted on the condition that her training philosophy would be followed. No shortcuts, no rushing. Proper preparation for proper results. 6 months later, Threshold 7 had been transformed. What began as a single human cadet had become an entire wing dedicated to human combat. Dr. Marcus had graduated at the top of his class and accepted a position as assistant instructor. He worked alongside Sarah, training new cadets in the techniques that had saved his life on that mining station. Zilanta had become one of the program's biggest advocates, publishing research on how different species adapted to human combat training. Her work helped customize the techniques for various physiologies. Koch had returned to his homeworld briefly, then come back with a dozenth. Then volunteers who wanted to learn from humans. The cultural exchange worked both ways. Humans learned from their alien students even as they taught them.